Tonight, I want to continue the theme that Han Shan's bringing up and go into it in some, and maybe continue this new method that we're developing, which is to see if we can't find illustrations or examples from other traditions or other thinkers that help frame or clarify some of these points. So if we have time tonight, we're going to do Han Shan, and then we're going to do Marcus Aurelius, and then we're going to do some Zhuangzi, and then we're going to do some modern science, and finally maybe end with some Buddhism. All that being time, so to get ready, and we'll have some illustrations. So let's look at the text. We have resolved to face this, right? So here we go. He's now going into the turning around of the confusion, the going back, the returning. So he's saying, first of all, resolve to face this directly. Take on the situation that you find yourself in. Face it directly. Use the method that's been passed down by these sages to reverse this flow. And again, we talked about the reversing of the flow as the idea that everything is whole and complete. It's intrinsic. We have it. It's lacking nothing. But our normal energy in confusion and in desires unchecked is to go out, to think that the solution to not only our life's problems, but the basic deep problem of human existence, the very deep questions of mortality and meaning, we think that they're outside of us. And he's saying, no, the solution to all of these somewhat are self-created, but even if that's the case, the answer to them are within this process of returning. So then he says, you have to shed, and we used the word last week, jettison, all previous ideas, understandings, and calculations. They are completely useless. So he's saying you're not going to get this through just rational discourse or even logic or analytical investigation, that the method that they're laying down, this what's called the three non-outflow methods of Shila, Samadhi, Prajna, or ethical rectification, equanimity of mind, and then the resulting insight into things as they really are, doesn't rely on books or even language at some point. It's innate, and it's a capacity we have. It's our spiritual capacity, and all we have to do is start to develop it. So then tonight he goes on, and now he's going to go through what a lot of the teachers do. And maybe tonight's theme, if it's anything, is to get at what this is that we're returning to. And what is it? And the language that used is, everybody knows, Buddha, right? Buddha meaning what? Awakened or awakening. One who awakens, one who is awakening. And so someone who's a Buddhist is someone who is trying to or in the process of awakening, getting clearer and clearer. The language is really interesting, because if it says you get enlightenment or you attain wisdom, or all of this would indicate that it's something you go after to acquire, in the same way that you shop online and you sort of look through things and you make a choice and decision. This paradigm is suggesting something else. It's saying to awaken means that you're, by analogy, a dream. So you awaken from sleep, or you awaken from a dream. And this is the context it's used. So it's very interesting. If you think about it, we go to sleep at night, and in our sleep, when our body's completely at rest and we don't know where we are, whether our nostrils are facing up or down, we can get so lost in sleep we forget what country we're in, we forget what gender we are, we forget our age. In my dreams, I can be very young. In my dreams, I can fly. I can do all sorts of things in my dreams. And while I'm in my dreams, wow, they seem real. If they seem very real, you'll sweat in your dreams, you'll shake in your dreams as if you're doing what you're dreaming. Your whole body will respond. It's a world unto itself, this dream. And while we're in the dream, we don't imagine really that there's something beyond that dream. That is it. And to some extent, we forget all of the things that we did in the day or in the previous days of our lives. All the things that are outside, our books, our computers, our jobs, our careers, our relationships. In the dream, they all seem to just vanish. And all that's there is the dream content and the dream landscape. And then, whatever the alarm goes off, if you live in other countries, the rooster crows. Now, some countries, roosters don't crow at the crack of dawn like the poetry says. When I was in Malaysia, the roosters crow at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. If you're at the city of 10,000 Buddhas, the equivalent, which are the peacocks, crow all night long. So it's, whatever wakes you up from that dream. When you wake up, for a moment, there's a little kind of disorientation if you've had a really powerful dream. How many people here actively dream? Oh, come on, it's okay. It's good to dream. How many people don't dream? I was going to say, how do you know? But, okay, so we dream. But if you're really a dreamer and you have profound dreams, you wake up and there's this kind of like, wow. Sometimes I don't even know where I am. I have to say, oh, that window, the curtain, this is this house, and so on and so forth. And you reestablish reality. Okay, so in the same way, using the language of awakening is the suggestion that, and Han Shan's doing this here too, we are now in the ordinary waking, what we call waking state, actually from the sagely or enlightened point of view, asleep. So our normal day-to-day 24/7 activities, except for dreaming, is the dream. Okay? So this becomes very interesting. As the awakening happens, we are slowly coming from one state of mind, asleep, dreaming, into a waking state of mind, but it's the opposite of what we thought. In other words, what we take to be now real, as we practice in our cultivation, gradually that becomes to seem more like a dream. And what is coming on the opposite side of that seems to be more real. So sometimes this is a very good term to get into and to really think what it means. To really think what it means to be waking up. The next language that used, and Han Shan and I were talking about this week, when the fifth patriarch and the sixth patriarch have this exchange, and it's clear that the Hui Nong is going to be the next sixth patriarch, there is a dharma, and the word that's often used is transmission, but it doesn't mean there's a transmission like it's given. Rather, there's a recognition or affirmation that the sixth patriarch understands. Because you can't give it. It's not like candy at Halloween or something. You just trick or treat, give me enlightenment. You can't give it. You can't transmit it. Because if you could, think about why would the sages then keep it to themselves? Why wouldn't everybody get it? Right? So it's something you awaken to yourself, and when you awaken to, then they say, what? You got it. They say, thus. Rusher. That's all they say. Rusher. And you're kind of reading the text and saying, wait a minute, I've been following up to here. Now I thought I was going to get something. All I get is Rusher. Because it's not there in the language. It's there in the experience that they had. So, anyways, the fifth patriarch passes on in the sense that confirms, entrusts him with the robe and bowl, saying, you got it. Continue this. Make it flourish so other people can understand and see it. Rusher. And that's the word they use. Jian, to see. Not to get. It's not duh. It's jian, to see. So this four-star general, I was telling you this last week, he chases after him, wants to get the Dharma, and he says, no, you can't get it. What did you do? We only talked about jian, seen. So in both cases, what's happening here, and what he's suggesting for us, is it's awakening and it's seen. It's a very natural, organic process. And doesn't require thought per se, but the stilling of the mind so that we can change our perspective, and this is a language I'm going to use tonight, or frame of reference and scale. So we are seeing now, we are perceiving now. But from what these texts are saying, we're perceiving, we're actually dreaming. We're constructing or projecting a dream that we call reality, and that is within the camera's narrow frame of reference and the scale that the camera, in other words, the self, does. And so what the texts do is to try to find ways to trick us out of changing our frame of reference and to change our scale so we enter a new way of beholding. And that new way of beholding is waking up or seeing. So right now they say, we see and hear and know in a very, very limited myopic way. As if, Zhuangzi says, looking up from the bottom of the well and seeing that circle and thinking that's the totality of the world. And now you're thinking back, remember we had the illustration of Plato's parable with the cave. Another perfect example of people convinced that what they're seeing is real, and they're talking about it and so forth, but these are merely shadows dancing off a wall of projected images and so forth. And what does the person do? Changes frame of reference, changes scale by going outside the cave and getting a whole new dimension, and in a sense wakes up or sees. Okay? So, if we look at this text here tonight, he's saying, take a good look. Take a good look at this body, this mind, this world. So now he's telling us the solution to the problem is where? In the here and now. This body, this mind, and this world. That's the field. That's our laboratory. That's our classroom. But take a good look. What does that mean? Take a good look. See, we could just pass over and say, yeah, I see it. Okay, so what? No, he's saying, really take a good look. So tonight we're going to play with some of this a little bit with some of these exercises. And he's suggesting that if you take a good look, you'll see them for what they are. Now, of course, implied in this is as we normally look, we're not seeing things as they are. This is very subtle. We're seeing things as we might want them to be. We're seeing things as we imagine them to be. We're seeing things as we fear them to be, or expect them to be, or hope they will be, or fantasize they might be, or how they should be. And most of what we're seeing is that's the dream. The seeing things not as they are, but through the medium of our desires, our wants, our fears, our longings, our fantasies. And so we don't actually behold what's there, but we project what we want. And this construction of reality, we've talked about this, is both psychological, it's ideological. If you have a certain ideology, you will see things through that lens and nothing else. But it's also physiological. So our very sense organs have a frame of reference that we think is, that's how things are. Whatever is within my frame of reference, I take to be real. And what's outside my frame of reference is very, at most, sort of uninteresting or not even there. And this is what's called hubris. So we are homo or egocentric in the sense that we perceive everything, even if we're not ideologically biased, in other ways philosophically biased, we are biased by our sense organs. Okay? And so, in many ways, we're held within the cave. Now, what Han Shan is arguing, the others are arguing, we can bust out of that cave at all dimensions, ideological, philosophical, egotistical, and even physiological. Okay, so I'm hinting at the next level here. We can use our sense organs in ways that we do not imagine right now because they're constrained. And this in Buddhism is called shantong, to penetrate spiritually through the sense organs. So the ears hear things it didn't hear before. It's called the heavenly ear. Okay? And the eye sees things that it didn't see before. And it's not magical, not like Superman. This is our vision unimpeded and becomes the heavenly eye, and so forth. Now, I want to emphasize tonight that all these texts are talking about not as mystical, far-out things, but rather natural extensions of our human faculties. And when our human faculties are unimpeded and allowed to perfect themselves, they reach into this realm. It's really an interesting idea. So we're in a shriveled capacity of our total worth, our total value. So he says, now, if you look at what they are, you'll see right through them. Now, seeing right through them, don't take that literally, okay? You know, sort of like you have, what is that called? Seeing through walls. What is that? X-ray vision. I go back to Superman when I was a kid. So Superman, you'd see him, and then some beam would come, and he'd see through the wall, right? That's not what this is talking. See through them means to see them for what they are. Deconstruct them, if you will. Dismantle them. So this dismantling of things as we see them to be is part of the process of awakening, and it's actually a spiritual exercise. Now, if you see things from the awakened view, then you don't have to see through them. You see, this is kind of, you don't have to see through them because you can't see them through the awakened view. So, if you're awakened, you just see things as they are and say, oh, it's like that. That's that, that's that, that's that. And they're all the same. Careful, they're all the same. This is called the level equality of all dharmas. Pingdang iche fa. Okay? And this is what all Buddhists see. That's why they say it's thus. And then we say things are unobstructed. It means they're all the same. They're identical. All dharmas are thus. They're the same. Wow. Okay, that's what it means to see it. But we don't see it that way. We have things that are really special and things that are real bummers. We have things that are really beautiful, things that are really ugly. Okay? We go through and we set this up. And what he's arguing here is you see right through them, you'll see. They all come from your own mind, and they are such, they're mirages and illusions, like images in a mirror or the moon's reflection in water. Okay, recurring theme. And then he goes on further. See, he's suggesting to you they're this way, and he's going to suggest to you that if you look carefully, you look at them carefully, you will see them this way. And this is where I find modern science is very helpful. Okay, modern science is not enlightened from the Buddhist sense, but it does provide us powerful tools for conducting these exercises. Contemplates all sound as the wind whispering through the trees. Contemplate all we experience as floating clouds drifting through the sky. Illusory, transitory things. Okay, so let's pause here. So the first thing he's saying is if you contemplate in this way, you'll see that they're illusory, they're passing. Now, if we say something's illusory, it means it's there and yet it's not there. Okay? It doesn't mean that it's not there. It just means it's not there and it's not what we think. So when we look in the mirror, what we see is what? Well, I see myself, but what is that? Is it the same every day? Do I see a different face depending on my feelings? Yeah. Right? It's true. And the same thing, you look at each other's faces. Faces you see every day look different to you, although they may never change, because your mood and your affections change, the face changes. So as we go into this, he's actually arguing something else. He's saying the very nature of the conditioned world is in flux, in change, and there's nothing steady or constant about it. Even that perception we have is a framing and freezing of it. It's like taking a picture and thinking I've captured that and that will stay forever. So if I take a picture of you or take a picture of you, then you will be that forever. But it's unreal. The picture is just an image captured, but you keep changing. In the same way, it's saying our mind is like this camera that's constantly taking these pictures and setting them up as real, when in fact, everything's in change and flux and we can't control it mostly. Okay, so let me give you some examples of this. So we'll go into, let's go into Marcus Aurelius first. Okay, anybody know who Marcus Aurelius was? Nobody? Huh? Yeah, he was a Roman. He was a son of an emperor. He was a philosopher. He wrote a famous work called The Meditations. So Marcus Aurelius' Meditations is one of those classic books that I'm sure you all read when you were in engineering school. Okay, no. We might take a look at it. His teacher was Epictetus, a very famous Stoic philosopher. Okay, so what I put up on the board for you is writings from his meditations. Okay, so I want you to look at this, and the first gloss is, and I can't see it, so maybe, who's got a good voice? Good, clear voice. Okay, read it out loud slowly. Mm. Okay, so that makes your Friday night. Now, what I want to present to you is that when modern readers encounter Marcus Aurelius, they say basically, whoa, he needs a shrink. Okay, they find him, what do you find? Gloomy. That's one of the words that you use. Gloomy resignation, pessimism, and despair. This sounds like somebody who's lost the gusto for life and is on the verge of thinking, why not end it? Right? What do you want to do tonight? Let's invite Marcus over for a party. And you kiss somebody at the door and he goes, yes, the slime exchange between blah, 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 right? Okay, so the problem with it is it's not that. That when he was writing his meditations, he was actually doing a spiritual exercise, and this is part of the spiritual exercise. So what he's doing, and his teacher teaches him this is the teaching of Epictetus, that to be free and to be happy, you have to see things clearly. If you don't see things clearly, you can't get freedom and happiness. You can't get peace of mind. So this is the goal of the philosopher in this tradition. And he's saying, by giving objective representation to the world, this is meant to be objective representation to the world, you dispel false judgments. You break up your projections. Okay? So what you do, his exercises are to go out and look at ordinary things and break them down into objective, and this is what they called physics then. The study of physics then was this. You looked at the physical world and you dissected it in this way. You wanted to get to see something in its essence, both whole and divided into the constituent parts. You see him breaking it down now. Whether cloth, the fine clothes he has, what is he saying? These are just fibers, fabrics from plants, woven together. This wine is just basically crushed grapes, and so forth. He's taking out, he's demystifying them. And when he says, and this is the language he uses, by doing this, you dissolve the spell. Very interesting language. What's the spell? The spell that we cast over ourselves by subjective and what he calls anthropomorphic projections. So we project out onto these things all kinds of parts and identities and so forth and call them this and that. This wine is more special than that wine. This is a $60 bottle of wine. This is a $120 bottle of wine. This tea is from this plateau in Taiwan, just in that 100 yards where blah, 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 blah. And it's a $600 an ounce, as opposed to Lipton. And we go through this, and he's saying, and it's just plants, for Pete's sakes. These are plants that grow out of the ground, out of dirt, and they're all fertilized by manure and stuff like that. And you drink it and think, oh, yes, Gao Shan. Come on. So he says, this spell that we've cast around ourselves is because we anthropomorphize, we project our human into all these things and then give them all these discriminating values. So he's not giving you his personal take here. It's not like he wakes up feeling really bummed and he starts to write, the world sucks. He's not doing that. This is what he calls a transformative exercise that his teacher gave him to do. He probably doesn't enjoy doing this. And his teacher's saying, slap, slap, wake up, see things as they really are. I want you to go out with your pen and observe the wine you drink. I want you to observe the party. I want you to go to the toilets during the party and inhale and think, what is this? What's behind the curtains? What's behind the stage? What are the cosmetics that people are putting on, so on and so forth? Break through it and see what they really are. Break things down to what, and he uses nature in the big sense, the vision of nature, he calls it. How does nature see these things? Whoa, it's a very different view. So he's saying you will then acquire through this transformative exercise an inner state of freedom and peace. You overcome the solidly rooted prejudices, the irrational fears and fantasies that we carry with us, calling out reality. So these exercises are not psychological despair, but they're actually transformative spiritual exercises to get him into the position of breaking the spell and getting out of the irrational fears and fantasies. And this is called to see things as they really are. Now, that's someone we can look at from a different light. So when you read his meditations, you realize what he's doing. He has an exercise, like he's saying, contemplate all things this way. Han Shan's saying, Marcus Aurelius, the teacher, saying, look at things this way. Okay, now let's move to our next example. And I mean, we can go all over the place, but I think I want to go to science. Okay, so if you could call up, what's that, the one I sent you, 10 powers of 10. Okay, so if we dull the lights a little bit, by the way, this is, we need sound. Okay, so just pause before you start. This is a short film done, and it's a more or less a scientific perspective that is meant to shape or shift perspective and frame of reference. Okay? So go ahead and run it. And I hope it comes out clearly. I don't hear any sound. A little louder.
The picnic near the lakeside in Chicago was the start of a lazy afternoon, early one October. We begin with a scene 1 meter wide, which we view from just 1 meter away. Now, every 10 seconds, we will look from 10 times farther away, and our field of view will be 10 times wider. This square is 10 meters wide, and in 10 seconds, the next square will be 10 times as wide. Our picture will center on the picnickers, even after they've been lost to sight. 100 meters wide. The distance a man can run in 10 seconds. Cars crowd the highway. Powerboats lie at their docks. The colorful bleachers are Soldiers Field. This square is 1 kilometer wide, 1,000 meters. The distance a racing car can travel in 10 seconds. We see the great city on the lake shore. 10 to the 4th meters, 10 kilometers. The distance a supersonic airplane can travel in 10 seconds. We see first the rounded end of Lake Michigan, then the whole Great Lake. 10 to the 5th meters, the distance an orbiting satellite covers in 10 seconds. Long parades of clouds, the day's weather in the Middle West. 10 to the 6th, a 1 with 6 zeros, 1 million meters. Soon the Earth will show as a solid sphere. We are able to see the whole Earth now, just over a minute along the journey. The Earth diminishes into the distance, but those background stars are so much farther away that they do not yet appear to move. A line extends at the true speed of light. In 1 second, it half crosses the tilted orbit of the moon. Now we mark a small part of the path in which the Earth moves about the Sun. Now the orbital paths of the neighbor planets, Venus and Mars, then Mercury. Entering our field of view is the glowing center of our solar system, the Sun, followed by the massive outer planets, swinging wide in their big orbits. That odd orbit belongs to Pluto. A fringe of a myriad comets too faint to see completes the solar system. Ten to the 14th. As the solar system shrinks to one bright point in the distance, our sun is plainly now only one among the stars. Looking back from here, we note 4 southern constellations, still much as they appear from the far side of the Earth. This squares 10 to the 16th meters, 1 light year, not yet out to the next star. Our last 10-second step took us 10 light years further. The next will be 100. Our perspective changes so much in each step now that even the background stars will appear to converge. At last, we pass the bright star Arcturus and some stars of the Dipper. Normal but quite unfamiliar stars and clouds of gas surround us as we traverse the Milky Way galaxy. Giant steps carry us into the outskirts of the galaxy. And as we pull away, we begin to see the great flat spiral facing us. The time and path we chose to leave Chicago has brought us out of the galaxy along a course nearly perpendicular to its disk. The 2 little satellite galaxies of our own are the clouds of Magellan. 10 to the 22nd power, 1,000,000 light years. Groups of galaxies bring a new level of structure to the scene. Glowing points are no longer single stars, but whole galaxies of stars seen as one. We pass the big Virgo cluster of galaxies among many others, 100 million light years out. As we approach the limit of our vision, we pause to start back home. This lonely scene, the galaxies like dust, is what most of space looks like. This emptiness is normal. The richness of our own neighborhood is the exception. The trip back to the picnic on the lakefront will be a sped-up version, reducing the distance to the Earth's surface by 1 power of 10 every 2 seconds. In each 2 seconds, we will appear to cover 90% of the remaining distance back to Earth. Notice the alternation between great activity and relative inactivity, a rhythm that will continue all the way into our next goal, a proton in the nucleus of a carbon atom beneath the skin on the hand of the sleeping man at the picnic. Ten to the 9th meters, 10 to the 8th, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We are back at our starting point. We slow up at 1 meter, 10 to the 0 power. Now we reduce the distance to our final destination by 90% every 10 seconds, each step much smaller than the one before. At 10 to the minus 2, 1/100th of a meter, 1 centimeter, we approach the surface of the hand. In a few seconds, we'll be entering the skin, crossing layer after layer from the outermost dead cells into a tiny blood vessel within. Skin layers vanish in turn. An outer layer of cells, felty collagen. The capillary containing red blood cells and a roughly lymphocyte. We enter the white cell. Among its vital organelles, the porous wall of the cell nucleus appears. The nucleus within holds the heredity of the man in the coiled coils of DNA. As we close in, we come to the double helix itself, a molecule like a long twisted ladder whose rungs of paired bases spell out twice, in an alphabet of 4 letters, the words of the powerful genetic message. At the atomic scale, the interplay of form and motion becomes more visible. We focus on one commonplace group of 3 hydrogen atoms bonded by electrical forces to a carbon atom. 4 electrons make up the outer shell of the carbon itself. They appear in quantum motion as a swarm of shimmering points. At 10 to the minus 10 meters, 1 angstrom, we find ourselves right among those outer electrons. Now we come upon the 2 inner electrons held in a tighter swarm. As we draw toward the atom's attracting center, we enter upon a vast inner space. At last, the carbon nucleus, so massive and so small. This carbon nucleus is made up of 6 protons and 6 neutrons. We are in the domain of universal modules. There are protons and neutrons in every nucleus, electrons in every atom, atoms bonded into every molecule out to the farthest galaxy. As a single proton fills our scene, we reach the edge of present understanding. Are these some quarks in intense interaction? Our journey has taken us through 40 powers of 10. If now the field is 1 unit, then when we saw many clusters of galaxies together, it was 10 to the 40th, or 1 and 40 zeros.
Okay. So just one illustration. But you can see where you could take this, where you could go, given the text we were doing tonight. Given Marcus Aurelius, given Han Shan, and those of you who read other sutras will realize that if you take that knowledge that's available through the extension of the sentences, both from the micro to the macro, you get a continuity of sameness, the carbon, for example, and yet, look at where's the perspective, where's the frame? So here we are, and our frame in the dream is, I got it all set up. And then all you do is pull or go in, and suddenly the whole thing starts to break and dissolve, and it's no longer what you think it is. And so what in this exercise Marcus Aurelius is trying to get done is to shift that perspective by taking apart in a very ordinary way the projections and the constructions of things. What you can do with this one is to go even further, and in sutras like the Avatamsaka, you can really probe the dimensions of where does this thing called me exist. And of course, in doing this, we didn't even do with time, right? A light year is also a measure of time. And so our time and space and where we exist in time and space is the dream according to this. But we're so locked into it that most people find this, how did you find that? Disturbing or comforting? What's the word you would use for what you just saw? Thus. Not the thus we normally. If this thus is in your head 24/7, your lives would be very, very different if you were carrying around this sense of perspective of frame and whatnot, right? So that's a second dimension, and I have others. Pull up one. I want to just show you. This is sort of more with Marcus Aurelius. Can you pull up some of those stills? Yeah. What's that? That's a little tiny bug that's in your hair right now. Mm-hmm. These live in your follicles. Aren't they cute? So when you see the ads on television with does her hair shampoo, I just want you to use the Marcus Aurelius contemplation and say, oh yeah, and those guys are going for a ride in there. Show another one. Call up another one. What's that? No, I'm not going to tell you. Oh, don't show what it is. What is that? It's not food. Just think, the next time you have a romantic kiss, these guys are going back and forth. This is on the surface of the average tongue. That's a electron microscope picture of what's on your tongue. And those are little bacterias and things like that, and they're there all the time. And even if you brush your teeth, they don't go away. They just like, wow, that's a nice bath. Keep doing it, man. They don't go. They live there all the time. So when you kiss, this is what's happening. There's a whole party of these. Give another one. Just, perspective. What's that? Can you enlarge or show it more full? Oh, it's only a partial. That's the white, that's a tooth. And that's not an unhealthy tooth, that's a healthy tooth. Yeah. One more? No, we've been there. There should be another one there. What happened to it? Oh, I sent you. Okay. Well, that's enough just to give you an idea so that we can use these kinds of images to look at the human body. And when he says contemplate the body, the mind, and the world, we can use all of these techniques to look at things through these perspectives and kind of dismantle the power that they have over us. So when it says form is emptiness, emptiness is form, when you saw in that construction out to 10 coming back, the powers of 10, you can see that in this mix, there's nothing solid. Everything's in flux. And even your tongue is made up of all these little, and even when it goes below the skin, you can see the molecules, and when you get down there, it's just a vibratory, pulsing thing. It's not hard and solid as we think. But rather, if you look at it, we see a surface, but actually what we see on the surface is already dead. So what you see on the surface of your skin, that is already dead. That's why it just rubs off. The vital stuff is down below, but you get down to it, and you get past the point where it's even molecules, it's even atoms. It's just sort of a field of some energy. And that's real. It's not like this was an imaginary. If you'd shown this 300-400 years ago, you would have been locked up as mad. You would have been mad if you said, oh yeah, this is on your tongue. People would have thought you were hallucinating. And they would have put you, if you said the disease came from these little things, what are you talking about? The diseases come from ghosts and spirits that inhabit the body. The plague in the Middle Ages the medical treatment was ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. That's where that comes from. Posies were the amulets you wore around your neck to ward off the spirits that caused the plague. They had no idea this is caused by bacteria or viruses. That was unheard of now. But now we think our view of things is really true. And the way we see things happening, we're no longer superstitious. 10, 15, 20 years, another generation, they're going to look back and you say, in 2012 what they thought? Ha ha ha, isn't that funny? So what we call today science was one time superstition. What we call superstition was one time science, so on and so forth. But these perspectives help you to shift. Let me do the last one. And this will be one of my favorites, Zhuangzi. Can you pull up the Zhuangzi? Now, Zhuangzi tries to accomplish the same thing without the aid of science, but he uses allegories and metaphors. So this one we're going to look at tonight is one of his more famous ones, I hope. Zhuangzi. There we go. Yeah. No. I sent it to you tonight. Yes. No, then I sent you Zhuangzi. Did you check? Right. About 20 minutes before class. Can't you get it here? Okay, then I will read you. Well, I'll save it for next week, so you can read it. We can read it next week. But I wanted to show you that from across these traditions, and the Zhuangzi is a really good one because it's about the cicada and the butterfly and the mushroom and the great bird. And he uses metaphor analogies to show the shifting frame of reference we have and thinking our frame of reference is the ultimate one. So instead of that, I will then go to this text to end. And this is from, sometimes called it's the Vajra Prajna Paramita Sutra. It's also called just the Diamond Sutra. And this is into the last chapter of the sutra, and it's a very famous passage. So you've gotten Han Shan tonight, you've gotten Marcus Aurelius, you saw that. And now you think about this text, which is one of the oldest Buddhist texts, as far as we know, and apparently the first printed one. So the Vajra Sutra was the first text printed in human history, preceded by a couple, 300, 400 years, the Gutenberg press in the Bible. Okay? And there's a very interesting story about this. But here's the text says, how should you explain the Dharma to others? You must do two things. Grasp at nothing. The Dharma says to grasp at nothing and to be thus immovable. Meaning once you return back to that root, you cannot be moved by anything. You're in your center and you see and observe all the myriad things like this, but there's no place you set up, there's no place you make an identity. So you're grasping at nothing, you're thus. And it says, and why? Why would you want to do that? And it says, because all conditioned phenomena, all conditioned dharmas are like dreams, illusions, bubbles, and shadows. Like dewdrops and flashes of lightning, contemplate them thus. Or if you want to say here, see them as they really are. So this text is giving you both metaphors that all the phenomena are like this. Now, I'll read you my teacher's commentary. Everything is a conditioned dharma. Eating, wearing clothes, walking, standing, sitting, lying down, running a business, all activities are conditioned dharmas. Those are examples of external conditioned dharmas. There's also what we call the inner conditioned dharmas, the five skandhas, our form, feelings, thoughts, the samskaric activities of our consciousness and consciousness itself. These are conditioned dharmas. The elements of earth, air, fire, and water are conditioned dharmas. The wind, 6 roots, the 6 dust, the 12 places, we talked about that. That's what's called the mind. The 6 sense organs, the 6 objects, and the 6 consciousnesses that link them together. He's saying all of these dharmas, whether internal or external, are dreams, illusions, bubbles, and shadows. So you come full root. But I really want to illustrate that this is the awakening, this is seeing things as they really are, and it's not unique to Buddhism. You'll see these exercises throughout, but you can use even modern science. You can use modern science to help you extend the seeing, to actually start to penetrate what I guess he would call or break the spell. So I can remember my first science class in college. We had a similar thing to this. And I walked out of there completely stunned. It was like my first Buddhist class in a sense. Because I started to think, oh my gosh, this thing I take as a solid earth, when you move up, it's almost like, and it's, where is it? It's floating in space. Floating in space. And at that point, my sense of identity, consciousness, solidity, everything was just completely shifted by that perspective. And I realized I'm floating on a speck that's floating as void. So it made it hard to find a career after that. So we'll stop here for the night, and next week, when the email comes through with Zhuangzi, we'll go back into that and then move on with the text. I don't know if you find this interesting, but I do. I'd like to bring these elements in to illustrate, to show that although you're reading ancient texts, they haven't changed in terms of their profundity, and there's all sorts of correspondences out there that shed light on this. This is really, really fun. So, besides, once they pulled that blue screen up, I didn't know what we were going to put on it. Okay, any announcements, or I'm assuming you don't have any questions? No announcements?
There's a sign-in sheet nearby the small table nearby the door, so you can leave your email if you want to get an update on the class. So
okay.
write down your email clearly.
And some of these things I'm sure Locke would share with you if you're interested in seeing them yourselves, just getting the downloads because he keeps them. Also, apparently this is flu season starting, so take care of yourselves. Be very careful, and especially since you saw the video of the tongue there tonight. Extra caution is required. We'll do the transference.